the story of Smile and Brian Wilson presents Smile and Brian Wilson, it's the triumph of the human spirit.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it more than just the story of an album that sat on
Mm,
the shelf and was an albatross on his whole life, really, until he finished it. Because we had always dreamed if he finished it, then he'd do other great stuff, and he sure did with that Lucky Old Son and the Gershwin album. So
absolutely.
so so we got what we had always dreamed about. It was just
Mm.
a dream delayed. Jamie, you just mentioned a moment ago about questions, and I think maybe it would be a good thing to do to come back to your show in a
Yeah.
month or so
When
when
I've read the
people
book.
when you've read the book and
Yeah,
your audience has read the book, and
I
they can
think so.
send in any questions they like, and I'll be happy to answer
That
them.
would be wonderful. I've got a few of them down here, but I think we could, yeah, we'll postpone those. But again, one of the dominoes I think was, and this trust and feeling secure was when you were putting the box set, the Good Vibrations box set together. And you worked on the songs with Brian, didn't you, on the list, and you said about, well, there's a gap here. What are we going to do about the
Yes.
gap?
Well, the thing that I learned from this experience is I very nervously sat down with Brian and the track listing that I'd worked on primarily with Andy Paley.
Wonderful.
May he rest in peace.
Yeah, wonderful, man.
And to this day, I regret that Trader isn't on the box set. It's like, oh
Mm.
God,
Yeah.
nothing's ever perfect.
No, sure.
But I sat down and went over the track listing with Brian, and there was one song in particular he asked, did you take that off?
Mm.
I said, well, Brian, it's your music.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
And I think he wasn't accustomed to that kind of respect.
Right.
He had been told by Capitol Records endlessly, here's what we're going to do with your music. And by the
Mm.
time we were sitting down to do this box set, goodness knows there must have been 30 or 40 or 50 greatest hits albums
Yeah.
milking the cow dry endlessly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I said, Brian, when we look at the track listing, there's a big gap between the Good Vibrations single and the Heroes and Villains single.
Mm.
And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, this all this period you're working on Smile sessions. And for this to be a true career retrospective, we should have some of the Smile sessions there, in my opinion. I wasn't telling him. That's the
Well
key
put.
thing. I
Put very
wasn't
well.
telling him.
Mm.
And he said, "Okay, what songs do you have in mind?"
Incredible.
And I just reeled off, Surf's Up, Wonderful, Wind Chimes, Cabanescence. I purposely didn't mention Mrs. O'Leary's Cow because I didn't
Mm.
want to roll those dice, so to speak.
Okay.
But he said, okay. And so between what's on, I guess it's disc two of the box set
Yeah.
and what's on the bonus disc that Mark Lynott put
Mm.
together from the sessions, it's
Mm.
almost an hour of official Smile music
Yeah.
out into
Remarkable.
the world.
Remarkable.
And
Yeah.
and I really thought that was going to be the end of the story. I didn't think it was going to be anything beyond that. Um, what happened was Capitol was so happy with the box. It sold really well. It went gold
Yes, it
here.
did, didn't it? Gold. Yeah.
And so I sat down with Brian. I said, you know, it was a 30th anniversary box set. Why don't we do a bunch of 30th anniversary collections?
Mm.
And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, like the 30th anniversary of Pet Sounds. He said, well, what would be on it? I said, well, we would have the album with vocals only and the album with tracks only. And he go, people really want to hear that? And I go, yeah, people want to hear
You're
that.
absolutely right. Yeah. Mm.
And he said, okay. And he says, in October of 96, we'll do a 2 CD Good Vibration sessions. And then in spring of 97, we'll do a 30th anniversary Smile Sessions box set. And we had a 5-year plan worked out.
Yeah. Wow.
And he and I went to Capitol and met with the head honcho there, and they were thrilled.
Amazing. Lovely.
And so we got the Pet Sound Sessions box set done, but that created um, some intra-group turmoil, if you will.
Yes. Right. Okay. What?
And that was the end.
Probably best
That was
not to go
the
in detail on that, I suppose, but I am intrigued. But
well, I remember hearing from the person I was working with at Capitol saying they think they feel like they've given that they feel like you, meaning me, have given Brian too much credit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, hold on a second. He composed, arranged, and produced every single note of the album, with the exception of Sloop John B, which he arranged and produced.
Hmm.
I said there are two instrumentals. There are two tracks where it's just a solo Brian vocal with no Beach Boy backgrounds. There's
Yeah.
God Only Knows, which is just he, Carl, and Bruce.
Bruce.
So
Mhm.
on five of the tracks, there are no Beach Boys whatsoever. How am I possibly giving him too much credit?
Didn't a complete ridiculous statement, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well, it was, but um, that's why I called the last book God Only Knows, because it was often the answer to the
Yeah.
question, God only knows. Why did this happen?
Yeah.
And I wrote two books for the box set,
I know. Fantastic.
and they went over them with a fine-tooth comb, trying to find my bias, and found nothing that was biased. So I was just telling a story as it happened. So all they did was Mike Love wrote an essay that opens the book, and it was the end of my days working on Beach Boys projects. I was kind of excommunicated, if you will.
Very sad. Yeah.
That was it was kind of it was sad in that we didn't Brian and I didn't get to do our 5-year plan.
Yeah.
But in a sense, it was the right thing, because a year and a half later he was going to be out on tour
Amazing.
as
Yeah.
Brian Wilson, and he needed
Yeah.
my support for that.
Was he getting flack at that time being doing solo? I mean, was he getting sort of negativity again from the Beach Boys? Were they being negative about it that time, do you think?
Well, Carl had died before he
Of
started the
course,
solo
yes, of course. We're
tours.
jumping, of course. And his mum and yeah, yeah.
So Mike had a license from Brother to tour as the Beach Boys,
Mm,
and so Mike to this day is still on tour,
I know.
keeping the name and the music alive. So good on you, Mike.
All credit to
Um,
him and Bruce. Yeah,
and Bruce is there, of course.
amazing. Mm,
And they have a terrific band,
they do,
and
yeah.
they're not playing 30 minute shows anymore. They're playing, good solid 2 hour
I
plus
know.
concerts.
At their age too, good on them. On their feet all the time. Pretty
Yep.
well.
So the Beach Boys music continued. Al Jardine wanted to use the Beach Boys name, but he couldn't because he had signed the deal with giving Mike the license.
Mm,
Brian didn't want to use the Beach Boys name. It only became an issue when he started a tour, and it's like, okay, what are we going to call this?
yeah,
And because it became Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. You know, There's nothing wrong with saying that.
not at
And
all. No.
and besides, people were out of their minds at the notion of seeing Brian Wilson live and in person. It was like a visitation. It was,
Yeah,
how can it be that I'm going to walk into this building and Brian is going to walk on this stage and play his songs for us? How
incredible.
could that possibly happen?
Yeah. So maybe another domino in the line of dominoes was the Wondermints then to facilitate this happening.
Wondermints are a big part of it. The Wondermints in the Brian Wilson band being Darian, Nick, Probin, and Mike. And when he heard them play, apocryphal or not, he said, "Oh God, if I had these guys in 1967, I could have taken Smile on the road."
Just for
But
them.
but he came to trust them
Yeah.
implicitly.
Mm,
Even before he started touring, he knew they were on his side.
mm,
So when the bigger band was put together in Chicago,
mm.
he knew he had Darian there
Yeah.
fighting for him, fighting um, the forces that wanted to, quote, contemporize the arrangements.
Yeah.
And Darian was like, no, we're going to either do it the way Brian did it, or I'm out of here.
I think that's great. Yeah. Good on him. What a guy. He could
Yes.
write a book himself, couldn't he? I suppose.
He could, well, in the new Smile book, Darian, Probin Nelson, Nick, Jeff Foskett, they
Oh,
all have a lot to say because I interviewed them extensively before Brian Wilson Presents Smile came out. And then
fantastic.
I did new interviews with them for the book. the living members, um, so that they could look back 20 years later. Let's talk about what this means to you.
Yeah. And it is a legend. The whole thing is a legend. And, it still amazes me sometimes that people haven't heard of it. I mean, it was talked about a lot in the 60s and in the early 70s. And then, of course, Brian Wilson presents Smile and yourself and the box sets and everything else and the album. And yet, people I know who know a little bit about music, some of them still haven't touched upon it. And that still amazes me. And I think, maybe this is part of your mission, or all our missions, I suppose, but particularly yours.
I think it's up to all of us.
Yeah, yeah,
There are 800,000 people bought Brian Wilson Presents Smile. If each one of them turns somebody on to Brian Wilson Presents
true,
Smile and the
true.
Beach Boys versions,
Yeah,
um, it's like that pebble in a pond.
yeah.
Uh, I have kids coming to my classes at UCLA. Professor, are we going to talk about the rivalry between Brian Wilson and the Beatles? It's like, yeah, okay. Well, I wasn't planning on it.
Okay, lovely.
I have
What
that
a
this is a
great
Beatle. This is a
opportunity for
yeah.
them and you. Lovely. I love that.
No, it's great. I mean, I have you wish you could come to the Beach Boys class because every week it's like my book coming to life.
Incredible.
Yeah, yesterday Dave Nolan of the Survivors was my guest in class.
No.
The week before it was Fred Vale. The week before it was Rich Sloan. In
Oh, incredible.
a
Oh, what
couple of a
can I
couple of
come
weeks
over sometime? Can I come
it's
and
gonna
sit in on one? Love it.
absolutely.
Oh,
Don
amazing.
Randy's coming to class at the end of the month. Uh,
Superb.
Darian Nelson and Probin are coming in May, and they're going to do three songs from Smile.
Oh,
So
wow. Amazing.
so it's um, someone else is going to have to pick up the ball from us old timers
Oh,
and
no.
run with it.
Well, I walk backwards a lot, hoping it might make me younger by going backwards, but maybe it's
It won't work.
no, no, probably not. But I had a lovely chat with Probin once because with David Beard, I think he was being an ASQ, whatever you call them, special members or something. You had this lovely interview with a surprise guest, and it was Probin. Oh, and it was fantastic listening to him talk about his experiences. What a player! What a lovely man.
It's hard to describe. You know, the world is full of
Hmm.
scoundrels,
I'm afraid so. Yes.
people who on the surface seem nice, but they're just trying to figure out how to use you.
Mm,
Darian and Probin and all those guys, they were there in service to Brian.
yeah.
The same way the studio musicians were back in '66.
Yeah.
And what
Lovely.
one of the band said to me, said, I think it was Nick said to me, he says, we not only have to do what Hal Blaine and Carol Kay and all those folks were doing, but we have to sing the vocals and do them both together live.
Remarkable. Yeah. How did they do that? I,
Hard work and
oh
love.
my goodness, hard work and love and ability. They had to have the ability from early age to be able to do that. Amazing. Incredible. And those experiences for you, David, must have, it's life changing, isn't it? I must be. I mean, I've just been on the edge of it, very edge of it, but my goodness. And the world can read your books and the new book and listen to the music and the story goes on, doesn't it? And Lucky Old Son followed, and Brian, he sort of blossomed. I mean, doing Smile, and then he wanted to tour again, and then new albums came, and the shows and everything. He just it's a rebirth. I call it. It's almost like a rebirth, born again, almost.
Absolutely. It's in show business terms, they would say he had a second act.
Second act. Okay, yeah.
So, it's just dreadful.
Yeah, and yet, I read it, maybe it was what you quoted this. He had to suffer, maybe, to triumph. Do you think there's something in that? That he went through all that stuff of not bringing Smile out to be broken in a way to then triumph, or do you think or maybe he could have triumphed all the way along and not had the breaking set or the
So I've kind of come to I think in the epilogue of the new book I talk about this idea that it had to happen the way it happened.
hmm,
That there's almost a biblical nature to
biblical? Yeah,
the
yeah,
nature, the journey he went on. But
hmm,
but but saddest of all, I think, is this notion that he had to suffer as a child and as a young
yeah,
man
yeah,
at the hands of his father,
hmm,
because that gave him the kind of pain that would cause him to write songs with such emotional depth and beauty. Because
hmm,
why at a couple of years old would Rhapsody in Blue appeal to somebody? Why would
hmm,
they hear that music and go, it's not Rhapsody in Joy, it's
yeah,
Rhapsody in
and
Blue.
blue,
And so I think that we're the lucky beneficiary of this Job-like suffering
yeah, Joe,
that he went through and infused his music with an untouchable depth. And that's why people like Sir Paul and Sir Elton
yeah,
react to it the way they do, because they know what it takes to make a great record. And
hmm,
they listen to Pet Sounds and it hits them. As Sir Paul says, I've often listened to Pet Sounds and cried.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, what more can you ask for?
yeah. Can we go a little bit on to Brian Wilson Presents Smile? Because obviously, um, starting to work on it wasn't easy, I understand, for him because he still had some demons. And I think you experienced some of the work when they were starting vocals, rehearsals, and recording. He wasn't so good and had to clear off to hospital.
Um, he when we got back from London, he had gone there to receive the Ivor Novello Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah.
This was, I believe, excuse me, May of 2003.
2003. Yeah. Yeah. The Ivan Novello Award. Yeah.
And while we were there at a press conference, very informal press conference, he announced, "Yeah, we're going to come back next year and do Smile."
Just
'Cause-
amazing.
and
You
you know,
what?
yeah, exactly. You're exactly. So when he got home, the joy of making the announcement, the excitement of making the announcement vanished. And
Right.
he didn't want to talk about Smile for
Oh,
months.
whoops.
As Darian described it, it was like, oh my goodness, there's this stack of dirty dishes,
Yes.
and I don't want to do them.
Like, yeah. Can't
And
cope
I
with it. Yeah. Yeah.
and that summer we were walking up the Third Street Promenade in Santa Monica, and out of nowhere, we're just coming back from the movies and going to my apartment. He said, I can't do this unless you're there every day.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what are you talking about? I can't be there every day. I got a company. I got a job. I
Yeah.
you
I
know,
was going to ask you that. Yeah.
I make documentaries. I said, Brian, the only way I could be there every day was if I made a documentary about what was happening. And he said, okay, let's talk to Melinda about it. And because when he first announced it, and I came back from England, all Eve and I did was like, okay, let's buy our plane tickets and book our hotel so we can be there. We didn't think about, I didn't think, oh, what a great chance to do a documentary. It
No.
never crossed my mind.
No.
I mean, never.
Another domino in the row.
And so Belinda and I and Brian met that night, and she says, well, what are the fans going to think about this documentary? I said, Melinda, the goal is to make a documentary for the 99% of the people in the world who've never heard of Smile.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was what was behind that film was to bring that story to them so that they
Mm,
might want to hear the music,
mm,
so they would understand the genius of Brian Wilson. And we went to work on raising the money and all that. So that's a whole other long story. Now, in terms of Brian, he was a reluctant participant in the sequencing of Smile. Um, at first, he was not eager to get to work on it, but Darian,
mm.
because it's pure love coming at him,
Yeah.
and Darian's very smart. Says, Brian, we're not trying to finish the album. All we're trying to do is figure out a sequence to play these already existing pieces of music.
Gosh.
And so they went to work on that. And
Oh,
you can watch Beautiful Dreamer and see the story of how that
the
unfolded.
one, and it's a
And then
wonderful.
and then rehearsals started in January. And on the second day of vocal rehearsals, Brian walked out of rehearsals, got in his car, and drove himself to the hospital, to the emergency room at St. John's in Santa Monica. And we didn't know where he was. We just knew he had disappeared.
Mm,
So for 3+ hours, it was like, where's Brian?
mm,
So it was a very, very difficult uh, process for him,
yeah.
but he was determined every step of the way that nothing was going to stop him. No matter how difficult it was, he found the courage to 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 keep going and keep going and keep going. Before London, he was really scared. And
Yeah.
Melinda said, Brian, do you not want to do this? We can call it off. And he
Mm.
said, no, I have to do this.
That it's just amazing he managed the strength to find that inner strength because he could have quite easily said, "Yeah, I don't want to do it," but he
Well, that's
didn't.
what he would say under almost every other circumstance.
Yeah,
But Smile, um, he knew it was kind of now or never.
yeah, and when he in the documentary and seeing him live, I think I saw Smile at least three times. I can't remember now. I think it was three. He seemed so on top of it, so happy. The guys were together. It was just amazing. And to conquer those things in the early part of it, he must have thought, yeah, the dirty dishes. Oh my God, I can't face them. But he did.
He did, and in the book, this one behind me, um, there's a point in the book where I suggest the reader, if you haven't listened to it in a while, listen to tracks 1 through 19 again of the Beach Boys Smile sessions, and remind yourself of the beauty that was created during that time, because
Absolutely.
it's before you hear the story, you're going to fall in love with the music, and
Yeah.
that's my goal.
Yeah. I
Um,
think that's fantastic. It's your mission. You're on a mission. The mission keeps going on, really, doesn't it, David? As far as I can see. It continues.
yes, it does continue, and we'll see what's next. I think, as I said, I think next should be um, a, another chance to talk to you, Jamie, and
Can we do? We'll
and
do that.
and maybe come June, maybe around Brian's birthday, we'll have people send in questions after they've read the book,
Fantastic.
because
Well,
that's really what's hard for me to know,
yeah,
because the book is so packed. It's so
can't wait for
intense,
it.
it's so dense. Um, there's it's you know 350 pages of Smile information, most of which you've never seen before.
I just can't wait for it. And it must have been. I mean, we'll be finishing soon, I think, David, because you've probably got lots of things to do, and time has moved on. But I could talk to you for hours and listen to hear you speaking about all this. We could go out for beers and never finish. I mean, I'd love to do that one day. But
Well, it may happen sooner than you think.
I've got a great friend here in Spain, great musician who is a complete Brian Wilson fan fanatic called Yanni Martinelli. And she makes music rather like Brian. And I've been very privileged to be involved in some of that. And we want to send you our album
How wonderful.
called
Thank you.
Polaris. So we'll
Thank
send you
you.
the album. And it's 53 minutes of Brian
It
Wilson.
better it better be autographed.
Okay, sure. We'll autograph it. Yeah. And there's my friend Yanni and me. But yeah, she's a Brian Wilson. We met through Brian's music, really. We met through that. And through making a wonderful friend through music and love of nature, we made this wonderful album. And I was so privileged to be involved. But yeah. So we'd like to offer you a copy and also Brian. Is that
Thank you.
possible?
Absolutely.
Thank you. David, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been a wonderful experience for me. I'm very, very honored to meet you. And you're so affable and easy to talk to and listen to. And we will release this. Obviously, I'll get it all sorted out and go on my channel. We'll probably put it in two or three episodes, maybe. And
Yeah, it's I do go on. So
I love it.
share it however best, but know that we all share a common love of great music,
Oh man,
Brian Wilson and Smile.
he's my guy. And I met him after Lucky Old Son as well, actually, and Melinda. And what a privilege. I just, they blow me away. And it's so sad that Melinda's gone because that's really affected Brian badly, hasn't it? And you know, but something's coming as Fred Vale and this Cows in the Pasture. That's something else to talk about, even. I don't know, maybe sometime.
Not with me.
Okay.
I know virtually nothing about it other than what Fred's told me, and
Yeah. And
um,
what a
he
great guy, Fred. You know,
he is a
when
very good. He
when
is
I
a
saw
great
him
guy.
talking about Sunflower on the interview when he went to see the radio station about promoting Sunflower, and they didn't want to know about the new single and that, and he was in tears when he was being interviewed. I mean, that guy, another one, another one.
Well, it's true. It's true. It's Fred. Brian has had some guardian angels in his life.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll just leave it as that. We'll leave it at
Okay,
that. And
we
and
will.
fortunately, without he needed them.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, he needed them.
yeah,
Fortunately, without them, he wouldn't be with us today, and there would be no Brian Wilson
for
Presents
sure,
Smile.
for sure. David, I hope we can have, well, I know we'll have some more time if you're able to make it sometime. I'll get the
Absolutely.
book. I'll email you when we've got the book and schedule something else in another time. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure. Really has.
My my pleasure. Always great to talk to people who know what they're talking about.
Well, I know a little bit. You know what you're talking about. I'm on the age I pretend I know a little bit. Someone said to me, "Oh, you'll get on fine because you know a lot about it." I said, "Well, I know, the Beach Boys have been in my life since the late 60s. When my brother was playing a lot of Beatles and Tamla Motown and things like that, I loved it all, but the Beach Boys still did it for me in those days. A 67 or whatever, Best of the Beach Boys Volume 1, Pet Sound, yeah, I've been a crazy nut for all that time.
It's what the book is significant in another way that you just addressed. It's not me telling the reader what to think.
Okay,
It's the people who were there telling the reader what they experienced.
okay,
It's what publishers call an oral history.
right, oral history, yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, David, once again, and look forward to. I
My
can't wait to
pleasure.
get this book. I'll be sending Amazon a letter if they. I'll send them a letter that we haven't got it yet. It's in transit, I think.
Yeah,
But
well, I hope it comes soon, and like Brian Wilson presents Smile, I hope it exceeds all
oh,
expectation.
my friend, God bless you. Thank you so much for all of it.
Thank you.
It's
Great
been
to
an
talk with you,
utter
Jamie.
honor. Thanks, and we'll be in touch soon, David.
Great. Take care.
And you. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.